What do you do when your own family turns on you unexpectedly? It all started like any other family dinner. Olivia, my sister, was sitting across from me, her brow furrowed as she stabbed her fork into her mashed potatoes. The air in the room felt heavier than usual, and I could see Mom giving me these concerned glances out of the corner of her eye. It's strange how, after all these years, I still know exactly what that look means. It meant trouble. I sat back in my chair, trying to enjoy the familiar smells of roasted chicken and gravy, hoping this dinner would go like the others. You know, simple, quiet, and full of the usual family chatter. But something about tonight felt different. It was like the tension had been building in the background for months, and now, finally, it was all coming to a head. The last time I saw Olivia like this was 2 months ago, when she exploded at Mom for what felt like no reason at all. She had screamed about how no one ever understood her, how we all were just pretending to be a happy family. I had been the one to talk her down then, the peacemaker, the one who would always try to smooth over the rough edges of our relationships. But tonight? Tonight was different. Are you going to eat that, or are you just going to stare at it all night? Olivia's voice broke through the tension, and I looked up from my plate. Her eyes were narrow, her lips pursed, and for a moment, I thought she might throw her plate at me. I took a slow breath, trying to keep my cool. It's fine, Liv. I'm just tired, that's all. She scoffed, rolling her eyes. Of course, you're tired. You're always tired. Must be so hard being the perfect daughter, huh? I blinked, unsure if I heard her right. The room felt like it stopped for a second. Mom and Dad exchanged looks, but they didn't say anything. I was used to that. Mom would often stay quiet when Olivia and I fought, hoping it would blow over without escalating. But this time, I knew it wasn't going to be that simple. What the hell are you talking about? I said, my voice sharper than I intended. I didn't want to fight, but the words came out before I could stop them. My heart began to race as the adrenaline kicked in. It felt like the air was thick with something else, something unspoken between us for a long time, but tonight, it was finally out in the open. Olivia leaned forward, her eyes flashing with anger. You think I don't see it? The way you look down on me, the way you act like you're above it all. You don't know what it's like to struggle, Emma. You don't know what it's like to have everything go wrong and still have to put on a smile for the world. You've got it easy. I felt the sting of her words, but I pushed it aside. You think I have it easy? Olivia, I'm not perfect. I've just been trying to make things work for everyone. But you. I stopped myself, not sure if I wanted to finish that sentence. I'd always tried to keep the peace between us, but this was the breaking point. Olivia's face twisted with frustration, and in a split second, she stood up, knocking over her glass of water in the process. You don't get it. You never get it, she shouted, her voice raw with emotion. You're always the good daughter, the one who does everything right, and I'm just the screw-up, right? The table went silent. I could feel the eyes of Mom and Dad on us, but I couldn't focus on them. All I could hear was Olivia's voice, now trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. I looked around the table, and for the first time in my life, I realized that no one understood what it was like to be me. I'm sorry, I don't know how to fix this, I said quietly, standing up from my chair. My chest felt tight, my breathing shallow. I wasn't angry anymore. I just felt empty. But I can't keep doing this. I can't keep being the person who fixes everything for everyone. I could feel my mother's eyes on me, but I couldn't bring myself to look at her. Instead, I grabbed my purse from the back of my chair, feeling my hands tremble. I needed to leave. I needed space, and I needed to think, away from the constant pull of family expectations. Emma, please don't go, Mom said softly, her voice full of concern. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. As I walked toward the door, I heard Olivia call after me. You think you're better than me? You think you're perfect, she screamed, her voice breaking. The door slammed behind me, and the cool evening air hit my face like a wave. My heart was pounding, but I didn't know if it was from the anger or the relief. I had walked away. I had finally chosen myself over the chaos. But now what? Was it the right choice? I didn't even check the phone buzzing in my pocket as I made my way to the car. I didn't want to hear what anyone had to say. I didn't want to hear their excuses or their apologies or their pleas for me to come back. I just needed to be alone. When I finally sat in the car and started the engine, I stared out at the road ahead. My mind was spinning with a million thoughts, but one question lingered. Had I done the right thing? I didn't have an answer. Not yet. The phone buzzed again. Then again. A string of messages. I didn't check it, but I knew it was from them. From Mom. From Olivia. From everyone. And as I drove away, a strange sense of uncertainty washed over me. I had left, but the question that lingered in the back of my mind was, would they ever let me go? Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? I've always been the calm one in the family. The peacemaker. The one who could keep her head cool when the storm raged around her. It wasn't a role I ever chose for myself, but somehow I ended up here. The older sister. The responsible one. The one who kept things together when everything else felt like it was falling apart. Olivia, my younger sister, was the opposite. From the time we were kids, she had a fire in her that could never be tamed. She was passionate, spontaneous, and often reckless. While I stayed home studying, reading, and quietly nurturing my friendships, Olivia was out there making a scene, breaking rules, and stirring up trouble wherever she went. Our parents couldn't figure out how to deal with her, and neither could I. I remember when we were younger, I'd be the one to stay up late with Olivia, trying to talk her down from whatever emotional turmoil she was facing. It was like I could never do enough to calm her down. Her anger, her frustration, it always seemed to bubble to the surface. And I was always the one left to pick up the pieces. When we were teenagers, things only got worse. Our relationship was strained, but it was still manageable. I went off to college, and Olivia seemed to get even more rebellious. She dropped out of high school, got involved with the wrong crowd, and spent most of her time partying. I was often caught between wanting to fix things for her and realizing I had no power over her life. I knew she was hurting, but she didn't want anyone to help her. I'll never forget the night she called me crying after one of her infamous fights with Mom. Olivia had been drinking again, and this time, she crossed a line. She'd yelled at Mom in front of the whole family, calling her names, accusing her of never caring enough, of being the reason she'd turned out the way she had. Olivia's voice shook through the phone, her words slurred by alcohol and emotion. But when she asked me for help, I didn't know how to respond. "Why don't you just fix it, she'd asked in a trembling voice. "Why can't you just make it better?" At that moment, I realized something. No matter how much I tried to be there for her, I could never fix the deep-rooted pain Olivia was carrying. No matter how hard I tried to be the good daughter, I couldn't save her. And for the first time, I wondered if I was the one who needed saving. After college, I settled into a quiet life. I found a job I loved and started a life that felt stable. I distanced myself from the chaos that had been my relationship with Olivia, trying to focus on my own future. But that didn't mean I stopped caring about her. In fact, I felt guilty every time I saw her struggle. Guilt for not being able to be there in the way she needed. But it wasn't just Olivia who made me feel this way. It was Mom and Dad too. The more I distanced myself from the drama, the more they leaned on me to be the perfect daughter. To be the one who could fix everything without ever asking for anything in return. It was as if my entire existence was built on making sure everyone else was happy, even if I wasn't. It had always been this way. When I was younger, I'd always try to make peace between Olivia and our parents. I'd tell Olivia to calm down, to think before she acted. I'd try to talk to Mom and Dad about how they could handle Olivia's behavior differently, but they didn't always listen. In the end, I was the one who always had to pick up the pieces after the storm had passed. I was the one who had to hold the family together. That's why tonight hit so hard. I wasn't just walking away from Olivia's outburst. I was walking away from the years of feeling like I was never allowed to be my own person. The years of being the quiet, dependable one, the one who put everyone else's needs ahead of my own. I had spent so many years holding my breath, waiting for things to settle down. But they never did. And now, after that dinner, after Olivia's explosion, I finally reached the point where I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. And yet, as I drove away, I couldn't shake the guilt. The thoughts kept swirling in my mind. What if I was the one who was wrong? What if I could have fixed it if I had just stayed? I pulled into the parking lot of a small park and stopped the car. The headlights cut through the night, illuminating the empty space in front of me. I sat there for a while, staring out at the dark trees. What had happened? Why had everything gotten so messed up between us? I didn't have all the answers, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't keep being the person everyone relied on to fix things. I couldn't keep sacrificing myself just to keep the peace. I had to find a way to stand up for myself, to set boundaries, to let go of the guilt that had been weighing on me for so long. I took a deep breath and pulled my phone from my purse. I hesitated before unlocking it, but the moment I did, it buzzed with a new message. It was from Mom. "Please come back, Emma. Olivia is really upset. She needs you." I stared at the message for a moment, my thumb hovering over the reply button. A flood of emotions washed over me: guilt, frustration, confusion. For a second, I thought about going back, about fixing things, about being the good daughter again. But then I realized I wasn't just doing this for me. I had to do this for both of us. Olivia needed to learn that I wasn't going to drop everything to fix her problems anymore. I put the phone down and sat back in the seat, my mind racing. What would happen next? It's funny how quickly things can go from calm to chaos. I should have known better than to think that walking away would somehow be a clean break. The moment I drove away from that dinner, I knew the calm would only be temporary. What I didn't know was just how messy it would get. The first couple of days after I left, it was almost peaceful. I didn't have to be the perfect daughter anymore. There was no one demanding my attention, no one expecting me to fix things. I spent the first few days doing exactly what I needed, taking care of myself. I caught up on some much-needed sleep, watched movies I had been meaning to see, and even met up with a couple of friends I hadn't seen in months. I let myself breathe for the first time in what felt like forever. It felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. But then came the phone calls, and the texts, and the endless messages flooding my inbox. Mom was the first one to reach out. "Emma, please. Olivia is so upset. She needs you. Can you please come back and talk to her?" I don't know what to do anymore. It was hard to ignore, but I did. I let it sit in my inbox for hours before responding with a short, polite message. "I can't do this right now. I need space." Of course, that wasn't the end of it. The next day, I received another text from Olivia, and this one was different. It was more personal, more desperate. "You left me. How could you just leave? You're the only one who's ever been there for me, and now you've abandoned me, too." I sat on my couch, reading her message over and over again. Her words cut deeper than I expected. The guilt that had been simmering in the back of my mind resurfaced, and for a moment, I thought about picking up the phone and calling her. But then I stopped myself. I knew what I was feeling wasn't the truth. I knew Olivia's hurt wasn't about me abandoning her. It was about her own pain, her own insecurities, and her refusal to acknowledge that she needed help. I wasn't abandoning her. I was setting boundaries, something I had never done before. Still, the messages kept coming. "Why are you doing this? Please just come back. You're making everything worse. Why can't you just be there for me like you always were?" Olivia had this way of making everything about her, even when it wasn't. She knew how to play on my emotions, to guilt-trip me into doing what she wanted. But this time, something inside me shifted. I was tired of being her safety net, tired of always being the one to pick up the pieces of her broken life. But even as I stood my ground, I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that I was being selfish. Was I really doing the right thing by staying away? Wasn't I supposed to be there for her no matter what? The more I thought about it, the more confused I became. Then came the phone call from Dad. "Emma, we need you to come home. This isn't just about Olivia anymore. It's about the whole family. You can't just walk away from this." His voice was calm, but the weight behind his words hit me harder than I expected. "We're trying to hold it together here, but it's falling apart without you. Olivia is pushing everyone away, and Mom is beside herself. You've always been the one to fix things. Please, just come home." I could feel my heart racing as I listened to him. It wasn't the first time my family had asked me to play the role of peacemaker, and it wouldn't be the last. But this time, the request felt different. They were making it sound like I was the only one who could solve the problem. The pressure was overwhelming. "Dad, I don't know if I can do this anymore," I said, my voice shaky with emotion. "I can't keep fixing everything for you. I need to figure things out for myself." There was a long silence on the other end of the line before Dad finally spoke. "Emma, you can't just run away from this. I don't want to lose you too." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. Was I running away? Was I abandoning my family? I hung up the phone and put it on the table in front of me, feeling the weight of his words lingering in the air. I didn't want to lose anyone either. But I also didn't want to lose myself in the process. For the first time in my life, I realized I had to stop being the person who always kept everything together. I couldn't fix Olivia. I couldn't fix Mom or Dad either. They needed to fix themselves. But it wasn't as simple as that. I didn't know how to walk away from a family that relied on me so much. Every message I received, every plea for me to come back, chipped away at my resolve. Was I being too harsh? Was I overreacting? I spent the next few days caught in a whirlwind of guilt, frustration, and confusion. I wanted to believe I was doing the right thing, that I was finally standing up for myself. But it was so much harder than I expected. And then Olivia sent me another message, one that sent a chill down my spine. "If you don't come back, Emma, I swear I won't forgive you. You'll regret this. I need you." I stared at the screen, the words echoing in my head. She was angry. She was hurt. But something about that message felt different. It felt like a threat. A promise that I was going to lose her if I didn't go back. But was that what I wanted? Was I really ready to go back to the same toxic dynamic? I closed my eyes, trying to make sense of it all. This wasn't just about Olivia anymore. It wasn't just about my family. This was about me. About who I was, what I wanted, and what I was willing to sacrifice. And deep down, I knew that if I went back now, I would be giving up everything I had fought for. The freedom to live my life on my own terms. But if I stayed away, would I lose the people I loved? The more I sat with the phone in my hand, staring at the barrage of messages and calls, the more the reality of the situation began to sink in. This wasn't just a fight between Olivia and me anymore. It was something bigger. Something that felt like it could change everything about the way I lived my life. I knew I couldn't stay in limbo forever. The tension between my family and me was growing, and every unanswered call and unread message was like a stone in my chest, weighing me down. Yet, the thought of going back, of walking right back into the chaos, felt like a loss of everything I had just started to build for myself. I hadn't realized until that moment how much I'd allowed my family's expectations to define who I was. I had spent so many years trying to be the peacekeeper, the one who was always there, the one who never gave up. But I had never stopped to ask myself why I was doing it. What did I want? Was my whole existence supposed to be about holding things together for everyone else? I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, peering into the abyss of everything I had been running from, everything I had avoided confronting. Was I ready to jump into the unknown and truly live for myself, or was I going to turn back and keep sacrificing my own happiness for the sake of keeping my family's world from falling apart? The journey I was about to embark on wasn't one I had planned. In fact, I wasn't sure what the end would look like at all. But in that moment, something inside me clicked, and I knew I had no choice but to start this journey, even if it scared the hell out of me. I shut off my phone and threw it on the bed. I needed space. I couldn't think clearly with the constant barrage of messages. The noise, the guilt, the emotional pull from every direction was suffocating me. I grabbed my jacket and headed out of the house without any real destination in mind. I just knew I had to get out. I drove for what felt like hours, letting the road wind around me, my thoughts racing. The city gave way to open highways, and the landscape began to change. It was strange how quickly the urban clutter faded, and the world seemed quieter, more peaceful. The change in scenery mirrored what was happening inside me. I had to leave behind the familiar, the chaos, in order to figure out who I really was, apart from my family's expectations. There was a small diner I passed every time I took this route, a quaint place with neon lights that flickered like they hadn't been updated in decades. It was the kind of place where people went to find themselves, or maybe just to find a moment of peace. Without thinking, I pulled into the parking lot, not even sure why I felt drawn there. But as I sat in the booth by the window, sipping my coffee and staring out into the dark, I realized it was the first time in weeks that I had allowed myself to just be. No pressure. No demands. Just me. A couple of hours passed, and I found myself scribbling down thoughts in a notebook I had in my bag. The act of writing felt oddly therapeutic, like I was giving voice to everything I had been carrying around for so long. I'm not sure when I realized that the journey I was on wasn't about finding answers. It was about embracing the uncertainty, about confronting the parts of myself that I had been avoiding. I wasn't just figuring out how to fix my family's problems. I was figuring out how to be whole on my own. That's when the text came. Olivia just left the house. She's gone, Emma. We don't know where she is. Please come home. My stomach dropped as I read the words. In an instant, the calm I had built around myself shattered. Olivia had left. I sat there for a moment, the weight of her actions settling in. She had always been unpredictable, but this felt different. What if something happened to her? What if I was the only one who could bring her back? I picked up my phone and stared at the message again. The fear that I had been running from for so long crept in, wrapping around my chest. I had spent all this time distancing myself, convinced I couldn't fix things, and now it felt like I was too late. For a moment, I thought about going back, about rushing to the house to find Olivia, to try to fix it all again. To be the person they needed me to be. But I also knew this was a turning point. I had already crossed the line, and if I went back now, I would just be reinforcing the same cycle. The one where I was always the one to sacrifice myself. I couldn't do it anymore. I put the phone down, my hand trembling as I took another deep breath. This journey, this path I had chosen, wasn't about saving anyone. Not anymore. It was about me. And I had to stick to that no matter how hard it felt. For the first time, I didn't feel the pull of obligation. I didn't feel the guilt. I felt fear, yes, but I also felt something else, freedom. I wasn't trapped by my family's expectations. I wasn't trapped by Olivia's need for me to be her savior. I stood up, tossed a few bills on the table, and headed back to the car. My mind was still racing with conflicting thoughts. But as I got into the driver's seat and started the engine, I knew this journey was mine. The destination was still unknown, but I was taking the first step in a direction I had never dared to go before. And for the first time in a long time, that didn't scare me as much as it once did. It wasn't until I got home that the weight of everything hit me. The road, the diner, the journey, all of it seemed so distant now that I was back in the familiar chaos of my life. I had thought I was making progress, moving forward, but now that I stood in front of my door, reality felt like a heavy, suffocating blanket. My phone buzzed again, another message from my mother. Please, Emma, you have to come. Olivia is gone. We don't know where she is, and she's not answering her phone. We're scared. I knew I couldn't ignore this. I knew my family needed me. I was still torn, though. I had spent so much time creating distance, learning to take care of myself, to prioritize my needs. And yet, standing here, knowing Olivia was out there somewhere, in whatever headspace she was in, left me feeling utterly helpless. I grabbed my keys and walked out the door. I knew I was walking straight back into the fire, but I couldn't leave her out there, not like this. The guilt was back, heavier than before. I had left her, and now she was gone. What if she did something to herself? What if I never saw her again? The thoughts swirled in my mind like a storm, pushing me into the car before I could stop myself. The drive to my parents' house felt like an eternity. My mind raced as I replayed the past few weeks, trying to piece together the moments where things had started to unravel. Maybe if I had been there more, maybe if I hadn't left, none of this would have happened. But I knew deep down, this wasn't about what I had or hadn't done. This was about Olivia. This was her struggle. When I arrived at my parents' house, the first thing I noticed was the absence of everything I had always known. The quiet. The emptiness. There was no one in the front yard. No laughter, no chatter. It was too quiet. I stepped inside, and Mom was sitting at the kitchen table, her hands shaking as she held a cup of coffee. Dad was pacing back and forth in the living room, his brow furrowed with worry. Neither of them looked up when I walked in. For a moment, we just stood there. I felt like an intruder in my own home. Finally, Mom looked up, her face pale and tired. "Emma, thank God you're here." Her voice was desperate, but I could hear the exhaustion in it. She had been up all night, probably blaming herself the same way I was blaming myself. I wanted to hold her, tell her everything was going to be okay, but I knew better. We were both stuck in the same cycle of guilt, of believing that if we just did more, things would have been different. "Have you heard from her?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Mom shook her head. "No. She hasn't answered her phone. I don't know where she is, and I'm terrified." I felt a lump form in my throat. My little sister, the girl who had once been full of fire, who had pushed me away so many times, was out there somewhere, and I couldn't help her. I wanted to go searching for her, to fix things, but I knew that wasn't what she needed from me. It wasn't what any of us needed. "I'm going to find her," I said, more to myself than to them. "I'll look for her." Dad stopped pacing and turned to face me. His face was drawn, his eyes filled with that helpless look I had seen so many times before. "You don't have to do this alone, Emma. We can go together. We can search." I met his eyes, but the words caught in my throat. No, I didn't want them involved. I didn't want to drag them into this mess. But at the same time, I knew I couldn't do it alone. I couldn't leave her out there. Not like this. "I'll go alone," I said, more firmly this time. "I'll figure it out." Before either of them could argue, I turned and left the house. The cold air hit me as I stepped outside, but it felt like a reminder. A reminder that I wasn't just doing this for Olivia. I was doing this for me. For the woman I was becoming, the woman who had finally decided that she wouldn't let guilt or fear control her anymore. The drive was a blur. The streets of our small town, the familiar landmarks, they all faded into the background as I drove through the night, the headlights of my car illuminating the path ahead. Where would I even start looking for Olivia? I had no idea where she had gone. But I couldn't stop. Not now. Finally, I found myself driving toward the park, the same park where I had gone the other night. It was a place we used to visit when we were younger, a quiet place to escape from everything. Maybe it was a stretch, but something in me pulled toward it. When I arrived, the park was dark, empty, and silent. The moon hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the empty swings and benches. I parked my car and stepped out, my breath visible in the cold air. "Olivia!" I called out, my voice breaking in the stillness. "Olivia, where are you?" There was no answer. The park was still. I walked further into the park, my heart racing in my chest. What was I doing? What if she wasn't here? What if I was just wasting my time? But then I saw her. She was sitting on one of the swings, her back to me, her body slouched in a way that made her look smaller than I remembered. My heart stopped. I took a deep breath and walked toward her. "Olivia," I said softly, my voice trembling. "It's me, Emma." She didn't turn around. "I'm here," I said again, taking a step closer. "I'm not leaving. You don't have to do this alone." It felt like an eternity before she finally looked up, her eyes swollen, her makeup smudged from crying. She looked at me for a long moment, as if trying to figure out if I was really there or if I was just a figment of her imagination. Finally, she whispered, "Why did you leave me?" Her words pierced my heart. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. How could I explain? How could I make her understand? Instead, I just walked over and sat beside her on the swing. We sat there together in silence, letting the night settle around us. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't trying to fix anything. I wasn't trying to save her or make everything better. I was just there. And in that moment, that was enough. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The silence between us lingered for a long time, heavier than the night itself. I didn't know what to say, and I knew Olivia wasn't expecting any grand words of comfort. She just needed presence, someone who understood, even without trying to fix it. We had sat together for a while, the gentle sway of the swing beneath us the only motion in an otherwise still park. Olivia's shoulders, which had been tight with tension when I first approached, gradually softened. She wasn't looking at me, but I could see the way her chest rose and fell with each deep breath. Maybe, just maybe, my coming here had given her the space to release some of the weight she'd been carrying alone. "I'm sorry," she whispered, barely audible, but I heard her. I don't know what to do anymore." I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. I wanted to say something, anything, that would take the weight off her shoulders, but I knew this wasn't something that could be fixed with a quick fix. There was no easy solution, no magic words that could erase the hurt she was feeling. "Olivia." My voice broke slightly. "You don't have to go through this alone. I know things are tough right now, but I'm here, and I won't leave you again." For the first time since this entire mess began, I meant every word. I wasn't saying this out of guilt or obligation. I wasn't making promises because I felt like I should. I was saying it because, deep down, I finally understood something. The years I spent tiptoeing around my family's issues, trying to smooth over the cracks, hadn't worked. I had tried to keep everything from falling apart, but I had neglected one crucial thing, myself. Olivia, on the other hand, had been so much like me, even when she fought against it. She had lived for others in a way that consumed her. But now, in this dark, quiet park, I saw the truth. We had both been drowning in our own ways, trying to swim through a sea of expectations without realizing that we needed to save ourselves first. She looked at me, her eyes filled with uncertainty, her lips trembling. "I don't know how to make things right." I turned to face her more fully, my eyes softening. Making things right isn't always about fixing everything. Sometimes, it's about taking one step at a time. About forgiving yourself. She shook her head slowly, the tears that had been on the verge of spilling finally breaking free. "I don't think I can forgive myself for what I've done. To you, to Mom, to Dad." I felt my own heart ache at the weight in her words. How many times had I done the same thing? Beating myself up, thinking that if I just did more, if I just fixed it all, it would make everything okay. But the truth was that forgiveness wasn't about erasing the past. It was about learning to move forward, one painful step at a time. "You don't have to carry it all alone, Olivia," I said softly. "We both need to learn how to let go of the guilt. What happened, happened. But we can choose to start over. Together." There was a long pause. Then, almost as if she was testing my resolve, Olivia whispered, "Do you really think we can fix this? The mess I've made? The mess we've made?" I reached out, placing a hand gently on hers, feeling the trembling under my fingertips. I don't know, I admitted honestly, but I know we have to start somewhere. And it starts with being here for each other. For the first time in ages, I felt a flicker of hope. Not because I thought everything would be fixed overnight, but because this moment, right here, right now, was a choice. A choice to stop running away from our brokenness, a choice to stop hiding from the tough things that we'd been ignoring for so long. I stood up slowly, offering my hand to Olivia. Come on, let's go home. She hesitated for a moment, looking at me as if she weren't quite sure if she was ready. But then she took my hand, her fingers tentative at first, but then tightening around mine as if grounding herself. The weight in the air seemed to lift as we walked back to the car together, the first real step in a new beginning. The drive back was quiet, but it wasn't uncomfortable. There was an unspoken understanding between us now. We didn't need to say everything. We didn't need to fix everything in one night. We just needed to show up for each other, to be present, to let the healing begin. When we arrived back at my parents' house, it was nearly dawn. The first light of morning was beginning to peek through the trees, casting a soft glow over everything. The world felt new, as if we were starting over. Mom and Dad were sitting in the living room, still waiting, still hoping. They looked up as we entered, and I saw the relief in their eyes. I knew they were still worried, but they didn't ask questions. They didn't demand answers. Instead, they just embraced us, their arms opening wide, as if they, too, were acknowledging the shift in our family. Olivia, Emma, Mom whispered, pulling us both into a hug. I'm so glad you're both home. I closed my eyes for a moment, leaning into her warmth, feeling a tear slip down my cheek. Not out of sadness, but out of gratitude. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was losing myself. I wasn't sacrificing everything just to keep others afloat. I was beginning to learn how to hold space for my own needs, even while loving those around me. We weren't perfect. None of us were. But we were here, together. And that was enough. For the first time, I realized that sometimes, in order to heal, you need to face the broken parts of yourself and those you love. It was painful. It was hard. But it was also necessary. And maybe, just maybe, that was the real beginning. The days after Olivia's return were filled with a strange sort of quiet. Things didn't immediately feel normal, but there was an undeniable sense of relief in the air. We weren't back to the way we had been, not yet, but we had taken the first steps toward healing, and that was more than I had ever expected. It was hard, though. Harder than I thought it would be. Every time I looked at Olivia, I saw the weight she was carrying. It wasn't visible in the way she moved or spoke, but it was there, just beneath the surface. I understood it. I had felt it before. When you're drowning in guilt and regret, it's hard to see any way out. But I wasn't giving up on her, not now. Not ever again. That afternoon, after a quiet breakfast where we all tried to make small talk and act like everything was fine, Olivia and I found ourselves sitting on the porch. The sky was overcast, a thick cloud cover that made the day feel heavy. She was staring off into the distance, her arms wrapped around her knees, her eyes distant and tired. Are you okay? I asked, my voice quiet, unsure. She didn't look at me immediately. The silence stretched on before she finally responded, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know. I'm trying, Emma. But I don't know how to fix everything. I don't know how to fix me. I sat down beside her, offering a small smile. You don't have to fix everything right now. And you don't have to fix yourself, either. I'm not asking you to have all the answers. I'm just here for you, Olivia. We'll figure this out together. She finally turned to look at me, her eyes filled with both gratitude and fear. But what if I can't? What if I keep messing up? What if I just ruin everything? I could feel the tension in her words, the rawness of her fears. And for a moment, I understood them too well. How many times had I thought the same thing? How many times had I believed I was just one mistake away from everything falling apart? I placed my hand gently on hers. You won't. I won't let you. And we don't have to be perfect, Olivia. We just need to keep trying. Her lips trembled as she nodded, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. The truth was, she didn't believe it yet. I didn't know if I did either. But I wanted to. I wanted so badly to believe that we could get through this, that things could be better. Not perfect, nothing was ever perfect, but better. We could make it through, together. Later that evening, my parents sat us down. The tension in the room was palpable, and I knew what was coming. Mom and Dad had always been the rock of the family, but I could see the cracks in their foundation too. They were struggling, too. And they needed us to show up for them just as much as we needed them. Emma, Olivia, Dad began, his voice serious but calm. We've all been through a lot these past few weeks. But we need to talk about what happens next. We can't just pretend everything is okay. We need to figure out how to move forward. My heart pounded. I knew what he was saying. We needed to talk about the elephant in the room, the one thing none of us had been able to address properly, Olivia's breakdown, my leaving, everything we had been avoiding. I don't want to keep pretending, Dad, Olivia said quietly, her voice filled with a quiet strength. I don't want to go back to how things were, where everything was just a mess that no one talked about. Mom looked at her with wide eyes. Olivia. No, Mom. Olivia interrupted, her voice firm now, stronger than it had been in days. I need to be honest. I need to talk about the things that hurt, the things I've been hiding from. And I need to start being honest with myself, too. For the first time in a long time, I saw the fire in Olivia that had been missing for so long. She was speaking up, not just for me, but for herself. And for the first time in ages, I realized that I had to stop trying to carry the burden for her. She was capable of carrying it on her own. But she needed to face it. We all did. I felt a lump form in my throat as I looked at my parents. I didn't want to confront the past, not the way Olivia was about to, but I knew it was necessary. She needed it. We all needed it. Mom, Dad, I started softly. I know we've been avoiding this. I've been avoiding this. But we can't keep pretending like everything's fine when it's not. Dad nodded, his face grave. We know. We all have our struggles, Emma. And we've been so focused on keeping everything together, we've ignored the fact that we're falling apart. But we can't keep going on like this. We need to face it, all of us. Olivia looked at me, her eyes searching for reassurance. I gave her a small nod, one that said we were in this together, no matter how difficult it got. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. We spent the next few hours talking, really talking. It wasn't easy. It wasn't perfect. There were tears, anger, and long silences. But there was also understanding. There was healing, however slow it was. When it was finally over, we sat in silence. The weight wasn't completely gone, but I could feel it shifting. We weren't out of the woods yet. But we were on the right path. Later that night, I found myself standing in the kitchen, making tea. The house was quiet now, everyone tucked into their rooms. Olivia had gone to bed early, exhausted from the emotional conversation. My parents, too, had retreated to their own corners of the house, likely reflecting on everything that had been said. As I sipped my tea, I couldn't help but reflect on everything that had happened. I had left. I had walked away from my family because I couldn't handle the pressure. I thought it was easier to distance myself than to face the pain, but I had been wrong. We couldn't heal if we weren't together. But as I stood there in the stillness, I realized something important. It wasn't about being perfect. It was about showing up. It was about starting over, even when the past seemed too painful to revisit. We could rebuild a piece by piece. And for the first time in ages, I felt a small, fragile hope. Not because everything was fixed, but because we were trying. And that was enough. The following weeks passed by slowly, like the turning of a heavy page in a book you don't want to read, but know you must. Olivia's recovery wasn't immediate, nor was it a clean break from her past. There were days when she would retreat back into herself, as if the weight of everything was too much for her to carry. But there were also moments, small moments, where I saw her fighting, reaching out, trying to rebuild the life she had almost lost. I watched as she started to attend therapy sessions, something she had resisted for so long. She'd always been so stubborn, refusing to acknowledge the depth of her own pain, as if admitting it would make it too real. But now, every week, she went. She didn't talk about it much, but I could see the difference in her. It wasn't dramatic, but there was a lightness to her step, a slight change in the way she looked at the world. There was a quiet strength forming within her, and for the first time in years, I found myself letting go of the guilt I had been carrying. I didn't have to be the one to save her. She was capable of saving herself. But, of course, nothing is ever that simple. While Olivia was beginning to heal, I realized I was still struggling with my own demons. I had always been the one who left, the one who disappeared when things got too tough. I thought I could run away from the mess, but I couldn't escape the consequences of my actions. The guilt still gnawed at me, the sense of abandonment I had felt when I walked away from my family. I had blamed myself for leaving, for not being strong enough to hold things together. I had to face my own flaws now, just like Olivia was facing hers. It wasn't until one particularly difficult evening that I realized how much I had been avoiding my own emotional journey. It had been weeks since Olivia's return, and while I had been doing everything I could to support her, I hadn't given myself the same grace. I had been too focused on her, too focused on fixing everything, to stop and think about my own healing. It was a Sunday night, and I had stayed up late, working on a project for work. The house was quiet, everyone tucked into their rooms for the night. I was in the kitchen, cleaning up, when I heard a soft knock on the door. I opened it to find Olivia standing there, her face a little paler than usual, her eyes red and puffy as if she had been crying. She looked small in the doorway, as if she were unsure whether to come in or turn away. I stepped aside to let her in, my heart suddenly racing. "Olivia? What's wrong?" She didn't speak immediately, just walked slowly to the couch and sat down. I followed her, sitting beside her, and waited for her to say something. The tension between us was palpable. There had been no outbursts, no big confrontations in the past weeks, but something was different now. I could feel it in the air, thick with unspoken words. "I've been thinking," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been thinking a lot about everything. About what happened. And I think I've been hiding." I frowned, unsure of where she was going with this. "Hiding from what?" "From you," she replied, her eyes meeting mine. "I've been hiding from you. And from everything that's happened. I've been so focused on what I've done wrong and on fixing things that I haven't really been present. With you. With Mom. With Dad." The words hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't realized how much I had wanted to hear her say that. I hadn't realized how much I had been waiting for her to acknowledge what we had both been ignoring for so long. "I get it," I said softly. "You've been trying so hard to make things right, but you've been forgetting that we're in this together. That we're a team." She nodded, her shoulders shaking as she finally allowed herself to cry. I sat with her in silence, letting her tears flow, knowing that this was something she had been holding inside for far too long. "I'm sorry," she said after a long while, her voice thick with emotion. "I should have come to you sooner. I shouldn't have pushed you away." I shook my head gently. "No, Olivia. You don't have to apologize. We both have our own battles. We've both made mistakes. But I left you," she whispered. "I left you when you needed me the most. I didn't even try to fix things with you before all of this happened." I sighed deeply, the weight of everything we had both been through finally sinking in. "I left too, Olivia. I walked away from you, from everything. I thought I could escape it, but I couldn't. I've been trying to fix things on my own, thinking that if I just kept running, I could outrun the pain." There was a pause, and for a moment, The air between us was thick with the shared understanding that we had both been lost in our own ways, pushing each other away when what we really needed was each other. "I don't want to keep running anymore," I said finally, my voice steady. "I want to face this. Together." Olivia wiped her eyes and nodded, her breath shaky. Together, she agreed, the word carrying more weight than I had ever expected. That night, after Olivia had gone back to her room, I stayed up for hours thinking about everything. I thought about the pain we had gone through, the walls we had built up, the distance that had grown between us. But I also thought about how far we had come in such a short time. And for the first time, I began to understand that healing wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about going back to the way things had been before. It was about moving forward, taking one step at a time, no matter how hard it was. I couldn't change the past, and neither could Olivia. But together, we could create something new. Something better. The healing process is rarely linear. Some days felt like progress, while others felt like we were stepping backward. The highs and lows were exhausting, but they were also a part of the journey, one that I had never expected to take, yet here I was, right in the thick of it. And I could see that Olivia was in the same place. She wasn't fixed, but she was changing. Slowly, but steadily. It was a Wednesday evening when everything took a sudden turn. Olivia and I had been going through some old photo albums, reminiscing about the past when the doorbell rang. The sound of it was oddly sharp, cutting through the quiet of our home. Neither of us moved at first, unsure of who could be visiting at this late hour. I stood up and walked toward the door, already sensing that something was off. My heart beat a little faster. When I opened it, I was met with a sight I wasn't prepared for: our estranged aunt, Charlotte, standing on the doorstep, her face drawn with concern. "Charlotte," I said, my voice betraying the shock I felt. It had been years since we'd seen her. I wasn't even sure what had happened between her and our family. All I knew was that after some terrible falling out, she had disappeared from our lives. No phone calls, no letters, nothing. And now here she was. "Can I come in?" Charlotte asked, her voice quiet but firm. "I need to talk to you both." I glanced at Olivia, who had gotten up as well, her expression tense, unsure of what to do. We exchanged a look, and I could tell that she was just as confused and hesitant as I was. But something in Charlotte's eyes, something desperate, made me step aside and let her in. We all sat down in the living room, the atmosphere tense with unspoken questions. Charlotte looked at us both for a long moment before speaking, her words coming out in a rushed and almost broken tone. "I know it's been a long time, and I'm sure you both have a lot of questions," she began, glancing between us. "But I need you to hear me out." Olivia crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing. "Why are you here? After all these years? What do you want from us?" Charlotte's face tightened. "I know I've been gone. I know I made mistakes. But I didn't come here to ask for forgiveness. I came because I need to tell you something important. Something about your mom." My stomach dropped. The mention of Mom, especially in the context of our estranged aunt, set my nerves on edge. "What do you mean? What's going on with Mom?" Charlotte hesitated, clearly wrestling with something deep inside her. "It's not what you think," she said slowly. "There's something about her past, something she's kept hidden. Something that could change everything." My heart pounded. "What do you know about her past?" Charlotte looked at us both, her eyes filled with regret and sorrow. "I never wanted to get involved in this, but you both deserve to know. Your mother, she's been keeping secrets. Big ones. And if you don't understand what's really going on, everything that's happened, the tension, the fights, the misunderstandings, it's going to keep getting worse." I could feel the room growing heavier with every word she spoke. There was a quiet urgency in her voice, and I realized that this wasn't just some casual visit. Charlotte had something to say. Something we needed to hear. But as I looked at Olivia, I could see the uncertainty on her face, the same disbelief that was likely written all over mine. "What are you talking about?" Olivia finally asked, her voice shaking with a mix of anger and confusion. "What's going on with Mom?" Charlotte sighed deeply, rubbing her forehead as if she were trying to gather the strength to explain something that had been weighing on her for years. "I don't know all the details, but your mom's been hiding the truth about her own family. There are things she's never told you. Things that could change the way you look at everything, your entire family history." My mind raced, but I couldn't focus. "What are you saying? You can't just drop a bomb like this and expect us to understand." "I know," Charlotte said, shaking her head. "I know it's hard to believe. But you have to understand, Emma, Olivia. This isn't just about your mom. This is about everything. The reason she's been so distant, so closed off, it's all tied to something she's been hiding. And if you don't find out what it is, you'll never understand why things went the way they did." I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. The words she was saying didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. But there was something in her voice, a desperation, a sincerity, that made me wonder if this was the missing piece we had been looking for. If this was the answer to the questions that had been building up for years, the answers we hadn't even known we needed. I turned to Olivia, who was staring at Charlotte with wide eyes, her face pale. She seemed just as lost as I felt, but there was something else there too, curiosity. A willingness to listen, despite the fear creeping in. "You're telling us that Mom's been hiding something," Olivia said, her voice barely a whisper. "What exactly?" Charlotte took a deep breath, her hands trembling. "I can't tell you everything, but what I do know is that you're going to have to ask her yourself. She's the only one who can give you the answers." The weight of her words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. My heart felt like it had stopped beating, and 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. What could Mom possibly be hiding? Why hadn't she told us? Was this the reason everything had gone wrong? Was this the reason for the distance between us all? And more importantly, why was Charlotte coming to us now, after all these years? I looked at Olivia again, her face etched with the same fear and uncertainty that I felt in my own chest. We were standing at the edge of something we weren't prepared for, but we were being pulled into it, whether we wanted to be or not. "Tomorrow," I said, my voice trembling as I spoke the words out loud. "We'll talk to Mom. We have to know the truth." Olivia nodded, though her expression was still clouded with confusion. "Tomorrow," she echoed. The door closed behind Charlotte as she left, and the silence that followed was deafening. Neither of us spoke as we sat there, lost in our thoughts. The weight of what we had just learned settled in, a weight we couldn't ignore. Tomorrow would change everything. The night was long. As Olivia and I lay in our separate rooms, the silence between us was heavier than I had ever felt before. The words Charlotte had spoken kept echoing in my mind. I couldn't sleep, couldn't stop thinking about the possibility that Mom had been hiding something from us, something so significant that it had shaped everything we knew about our family. I tossed and turned, the weight of the coming conversation pressing down on me. What could it possibly be? What kind of secret could our mother be keeping? And why hadn't she told us? I wasn't sure what to expect when we finally faced her. Would she deny everything? Would she admit to something we couldn't even begin to understand? My heart raced, but I knew we couldn't avoid it any longer. We had to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The morning came far too soon, and the sun was barely up when I made my way downstairs. Olivia was already in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a cup of coffee, her face pale and her eyes distant. She looked like she hadn't slept either. Neither of us spoke as I joined her, the tension between us palpable. "Do you think she'll tell us?" Olivia asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. I looked at her, wondering the same thing. "I don't know. But we need to try." We both knew that today would be the day everything would change. I just didn't know if we were ready for it. When Mom came downstairs, she seemed surprised to see both of us sitting at the kitchen table, waiting. She didn't say anything at first, just gave us a curious look before going to make her morning coffee. But there was something different in the air, a heavy, unspoken understanding that this wasn't just a casual morning. Finally, Olivia spoke. Mom, we need to talk. Mom stopped in her tracks, her hand frozen over the coffee pot. She looked at Olivia and then at me, her expression guarded. About what? She asked, but I could hear the underlying tension in her voice. She knew exactly what we were going to ask. About what Charlotte said, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though my hands were trembling. She said there's something you've been hiding from us. Something important about your past. Mom's face faltered for just a second before she quickly masked it with her usual calm demeanor. She turned away and began pouring her coffee, as if the question itself wasn't worth acknowledging. But I saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands shook ever so slightly. Charlotte doesn't know what she's talking about, Mom said, but there was no conviction in her voice. I don't know why she's bringing up these things now. There's nothing to discuss. Mom, Olivia said, her voice soft but firm. Please. We have to know. Charlotte came here for a reason. You can't just keep ignoring it. The room was quiet for a long moment, and I could see the internal battle Mom was fighting. I could see the fear in her eyes, the hesitation. For so long, she had been the rock, the one who held everything together. But now, as she stood in front of us, I saw a vulnerability in her that I had never seen before. The walls she had built up were starting to crack. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she sat down at the table with us. Her hands were clasped together, and her eyes were downcast, unable to meet ours. The silence was suffocating. You're right, she said, her voice barely audible. There are things about my past that I've never shared with you. Things that I thought I could leave behind. We waited, breathless, for her to continue. Olivia's fingers twitched nervously, but I couldn't bring myself to speak. I was afraid if I opened my mouth, I might shatter whatever fragile moment we were having. I wasn't always who you think I am, Mom continued, her voice breaking slightly. Before I met your father, before I moved here, there was another life. Another family. And it wasn't the kind of life that I wanted for you. It wasn't the kind of life I wanted for myself. Her words hung in the air like a storm about to break. Olivia and I exchanged a glance, our eyes wide with disbelief. What could she possibly mean? Your father and I, we had a lot of dreams, a lot of plans for the future, Mom said, her voice trembling. But the truth is, I was running from something. From a family that I couldn't be a part of anymore. A life that I couldn't go back to. She stopped and took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. When I came here, I started fresh. I buried everything. I left behind the people who hurt me. I cut them out of my life completely. I didn't want you girls to know about any of it, because I thought it would be safer that way. I leaned forward, my heart racing. Who were they? What happened? Mom's eyes welled up with tears, and she wiped them away quickly. I had a brother. A twin brother. He wasn't a good person. He got involved with dangerous people, and I couldn't stand by and watch him destroy himself. There were things I couldn't ignore. Things that terrified me. And I had to leave. I had to protect you. It felt like the ground was pulled out from under me. A twin brother? A dangerous past? It all seemed so far removed from the mother I had known. She had never once hinted at any of this. I didn't want you to know about it, Mom continued, her voice cracking. I thought I could protect you by keeping it all hidden. But now I realize I've been doing more harm than good. I've been lying to you. I've been lying to myself. Olivia's face was pale, and I could see the confusion in her eyes. She was trying to piece it all together, but nothing made sense. Nothing added up. I had to leave them behind, Mom whispered. But the past doesn't stay buried forever. And now it's starting to catch up with me. The silence that followed was deafening. The truth was more than I had expected, more than I could have prepared for. Our mother's life, the life she had kept hidden from us, had been full of pain, secrets, and fear. She had been protecting us all along, but in doing so, she had isolated herself, and in turn, isolated us. Mom, Olivia whispered, her voice full of raw emotion. We had no idea. You've been carrying this all by yourself. I'm sorry, Mom said, tears streaming down her face. I thought I could protect you. But I was wrong. I can't protect you from everything. And I can't hide from the past anymore. In that moment, I understood. We had all been carrying our own burdens, my mother, my sister, and I. The walls between us, the distance, the silence, it was all part of the same story. And now, finally, we were starting to see it for what it was. The truth was painful, but it was the only way we could move forward. I reached over and took Olivia's hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. We didn't have all the answers, but we had each other. And that was enough for now. The days following the revelation about Mom's past were a whirlwind of emotions, a mix of confusion, sadness, and a strange sense of understanding. Mom's secret had shattered the carefully constructed world we had known, and there was no going back. The story she had kept hidden for so long was now a part of us, and though the truth was painful, it also opened up a door to healing, something we hadn't known we needed until it was right in front of us. After our conversation that day, there were more talks. Long, difficult ones where we all tried to process what had been said. We all cried at some point. I couldn't tell if I was crying for the broken pieces of my childhood or for the woman I had just learned to see for who she truly was, someone who had suffered and tried to protect us, but had done so at the expense of her own peace of mind. In the weeks that followed, things didn't magically get better. The wounds didn't heal overnight, but something had shifted within us, something I couldn't quite put into words. Mom was no longer the distant figure I had seen her as before. She wasn't perfect, she wasn't invincible, but she was human. She was vulnerable, just like the rest of us. And that connection, seeing her as someone who had lived through pain, who had made mistakes, allowed me to finally let go of the resentment I didn't even know I was holding on to. For Olivia, it was different. She had always been more reserved, more protective of her own heart. The revelation hit her hardest. She had always looked up to Mom as a symbol of strength, someone who could withstand anything. But now, with the knowledge of what Mom had endured, Olivia found herself struggling to reconcile the image of the woman she had admired with the truth of her troubled past. It wasn't easy for her to forgive, not yet. But over time, we both began to see the shift. Mom wasn't asking for forgiveness. She had never expected it, not in the way that we had hoped. She had just wanted us to understand, to see her, to see the person behind the image we had always had of her. I watched Olivia as she worked through her emotions, trying to come to terms with what she had learned. It was painful to see her retreat into herself at times, but I knew she would come around. She always did. And like me, she would find her own way to navigate this new truth. I still hadn't spoken to Charlotte much. She had disappeared as quickly as she had come, leaving us with more questions than answers. But I couldn't help but wonder, was she really the one who had pulled back the curtain on our family's hidden past, or was it a part of Mom's plan all along to reveal it when the time was right? Either way, Charlotte's visit had set the wheels in motion, and we were now on a different path, one that was uncertain but had to be followed. A few weeks later, we sat down as a family again. Just the three of us. Mom, Olivia, and me. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon, and the house was peaceful for the first time in a long while. We didn't talk about the past. We didn't have to. We just existed in that moment. Olivia looked at me, a small, tentative smile on her face. You know, I think I'm starting to get it, she said, her voice calm but thoughtful. I'm starting to understand why Mom did what she did. Maybe it wasn't perfect, but she tried. And maybe that's enough. I nodded, my heart heavy with the same realization. It wasn't about perfection. It was about the effort, the sacrifices, and the love that was woven into the fabric of our family, even if it was sometimes hidden beneath layers of secrets and silence. Mom reached over and took our hands, one in each of hers. Her grip was soft, but it was a reminder that, despite everything, we were still a family. And families, no matter how messy they are, have a way of holding each other up when everything else seems to fall apart. "We'll get through this," Mom said, her voice filled with a quiet strength I hadn't heard in a long time. Together. And for the first time in a long while, I believed her. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy. There would still be challenges. There would still be moments of doubt and confusion. But we had each other. We were learning how to forgive, how to let go, and most importantly, how to move forward, one step at a time. As I sat there with Olivia and Mom, I realized something that took me far too long to understand. We didn't need to have all the answers. We didn't need to fix everything. What mattered was that we were together, facing whatever came next, and that was enough. "I think this is the beginning of something new," I said softly, my voice steady and full of hope. Olivia looked at me, her smile growing wider. "Yeah, I think you're right." And in that moment, I felt it. The shift. The healing. The fresh start that was finally within reach. As we sat there, together in the quiet of our home, I knew that we would be okay. We had already survived so much. Now it was time to move forward. The future wasn't as uncertain as it had once seemed. It was a little bit clearer now, shaped not by secrets, but by truth, love, and the bond we shared as a family. And with that, we were ready for whatever came next. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?